I have to start with a prayer. Om Akanatamaram Vishwakanam Janasalataya Suran Kandena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stakatandena Kusave Anchakalpatrubhascha Kripa Sindhu Devacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivastava Gaurava Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I jotted a few notes while I was sitting here. This was the first time I was ever thinking to myself, I wish I had many tongues. There's so many things I would like to say, and I know there's not a lot of time. Aditi Prabhu, I wanted to tell you one thing. You were how Prabhupada didn't yell at you, you said it in a few different occasions when you fell asleep before him. And I one time had malaria and fell asleep before Prabhupada at a class. And he yelled at me. And he told me if I was tired, go back to bed and sleep. And what I was thinking was, Prabhupada didn't yell at women. That was one of the good fortunes of, yes, Prabhupada treated it in general, of course. But he didn't. He yelled at the men. He definitely made up for it with the men, not yelling at the women. So I just wanted to let you know. And neither giving Prabhupada a garland was very nice, even while he was chanting. It's interesting we talk about Prabhupada, and sometimes devotees will say, Prabhupada saw me, he saw right through me, he saw all my dirt and all how horrible. That's not what Prabhupada saw. All he saw were devotees everywhere. When he saw us, he saw people performing devotional service. You know, some of us, we had that experience. The first thing Prabhupada did when I became his servant, and I'm not even going to tell the story, was to make me very comfortable. I was in complete anxiety. And all of this we're doing here. I'm very happy to be here tonight. It's my first opportunity to speak. I've watched every class that's gone on. I want to thank all of the devotees who have been involved in putting all of this festival on the internet, because it's been really wonderful to be able to watch all the classes and the kirtans and Guru Dasa and Harinam, pointing out all the places of pilgrimage that Prabhupada went to. Just the whole week has just been wonderful. So I'd like to thank them, and of course all my God brothers and God sisters for giving me the chance to speak. I did come to London with Srila Prabhupada first time in early 1973. My wife Amekala, she wanted me to tell one story unrelated to anything I would know about Bury Place. And she said downstairs there was a big sink. Well, I guess it was on the ground floor. It was a very large sink. And she said our practice every day when we would come in to the temple from outside in Harinam, we would wash our hands in the sink, and then we would wash our feet in the sink. And then we would wash our plates in the sink for prasadam. And she said there was that one sink there. She said, but it was, she just remembers how that was rather unusual. Yeah, in the basement. Yeah, yeah. You washed your feet there a few times. We should get that sink. I think all that. Okay, I'll keep it here for now. I'm going to start. We've told a lot of stories about cooking. Srila Prabhupada, Jamuna started out, we're the kitchen religion, and it's all about cooking and taking prasadam, offering prasadam, receiving prasadam. And it was a big part of my service. One of the main things I did for Prabhupada was cook, massage and cook at the same time. But I wanted to mention one person who was probably the youngest person that ever cooked a meal for Srila Prabhupada. And at the time he cooked for Prabhupada, I was there in the area. He was 14 years old, and he cooked Prabhupada's lunch. And this happened while Prabhupada was staying at Bhaktivedanta Manor. And it happened kind of by accident. His family, he came from a family of cooks. Let's say who we're talking about now, Karuna Dakshai Prabhu, who's right here, my godbrother. And his father offered him to cook. Shir Dakshai Maharaj offered him to cook for Prabhupada. So Prabhupada, in his room, his Bhaktivedanta Manor, said, yes, of course. And I was there. And my big mistake, he was 14, I was 20. And as I said, I cooked and massaged for Prabhupada at the same time, which meant, she was talking about Prabhupada's cooker, polishing his cooker. So right before the massage, you would set up Prabhupada's cooker. You would put dal, rice, various vegetables, which you would later take out in chants. And you would put it on a very low flame, because after you did that, you would leave the room and go anywhere from, 100 feet to a block away to give Prabhupada a massage, depending on where your kitchen facility was. And now Prabhupada's massage would go on from anywhere from 1 hour to 2.5 hours. And all of that time, the most important thing you have to do is somewhere else, and you can't see it, you can't smell it, you can't hear it, and you don't even know how long it's going to cook. And that was Prabhupada's lunch in the other room somewhere. And you're massaging him. And his massage had no time factor. You massaged each area until he went. And then you moved to the next area. And you did that area until again you go, okay. And then you move to the next. And that could take, sometimes his back, 1 hour. As hard as you could. That was massage for Prabhupada. So anyway, when I had this opportunity, my godbrother, 14-year-old godbrother, was going to cook for Prabhupada, I was like, that's wonderful. I just have to give Prabhupada a massage and I don't have to think about cooking, which wasn't a very intelligent way to think. But I never claimed to be intelligent. So I'm giving Prabhupada a massage and I'm just all relaxed. There's no cooker in the other room. Prabhu's cooking his lunch. He's 14 years old. And so the massage is done. Prabhupada bathes, dresses, says Gayatri. And of course, the two of us, we go in together. Karuna and myself, we go in together. And Prabhupada, as he always did, he sat on the floor. He had a little choki, a little table. And he would face, he sat at the window. He would face outside the window. Couldn't really see outside sitting on the floor, but he would face the wall when Prabhupada would take prasad. So we bring in the plates and put it down. And Karuna left, and I'm there with Prabhupada, and he's looking at this meal. And it looked like a meal that was prepared by a 14-year-old boy. Not trying to offend you, he did wonderful service. And Prabhupada looked and he tasted the dal and he said, "Did you help him?" And then I realized what a huge mistake I had made, and of course I just said, "No, Prabhupada." And he looked and he said, "He's just a boy." He said, "How could you leave him alone to cook my lunch?" And Prabhupada, there wasn't an answer. What could I say? Because I was selfish. I just said, and then Prabhupada said, "This dal," he said, "is like mud." And these chapatis, he said, "they're terrible." And then Karuna comes back in with another chapati. And he puts it down, he offers obeisances. And Prabhupada looks and he goes, "Very nice." wasn't a nice day. It was the one and only time I ever. So that was here at the manor in Karuna. He was the youngest person, but he had that opportunity, and he did it with all seriousness and devotion to Srila Prabhupada. He just wanted to cook for Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was pleased with his offering. But he wasn't pleased with my service or my lack of attention to my service. So simultaneously, these things could go on at the same time. Everyone else is like that. Krishna fulfills all desires. I really wanted to say so many things about my god brothers and god sisters, these 4 devotees that have come here for this festival. And all of the, yes, I know everyone's here. Because they're very special. We're all very special. And that's what's wonderful to Prabhupada. Once in 1996, on Prabhupada's centennial, second generation devotee said to me, "Did Prabhupada treat anyone special?" And I'd never been asked it before. And I just stopped. And he wanted a certain answer. And he was a disciple of someone. And he knew he was special. And I saw it, and I said, yes. I said, everyone. And that's what you hear from everyone that speaks. I said, Prabhupada treated us special. And for myself, I look at it sometimes and I think, yeah, I was with Prabhupada for some time, over 2 years, and I think he just tolerated me. You know? Almost to the point sometimes I thought he didn't even know if I was there or not. But it's really not true, but I think like that helps. I was a servant, that's all I was his menial servant for the whole time I was with him. And these devotees, Guru Das, Jamuna, Shyamasundar, Malati, from the very beginning. I mean, I joined in 1971. I was 19, they came in 1966, 1965, 1967. From the moment I was in the association of these senior devotees, to me it was a whole different, felt like a second generation devotee. When I saw them, just the potency of these people, and we can see what they've done. And just like when they left here, where did they go? Prabhupada sent them to India, to Vrindavan, Guru Das and Jamuna. They went to Vrindavan, to Radha Damodar temple, taking care of Prabhupada's rooms, establishing ISKCON in Vrindavan. So the services that these people have done, it's just amazing. And so I had wanted to tell different stories about them and Srila Prabhupada, so if that's okay. I wanted to start, well, we can start anywhere. I'll start with Jamuna. Again, I met Shyamasundar first time was in John Mastami of 1972. So that was my first experience. And again, he was older. I think he's like 60. He's like 8 years older than I am or something. So when you're 20 years old, somebody's 28. That's just a lot different. You know, he was very senior to me in every respect. So I all of a sudden became Prabhupada's servant. I mentioned it at the manor last night. So now I got to meet Prabhupada, Shyamasundar, and Pradyumna, Arundhati's husband at the time, Pradyumna, another very senior, we traveled with Prabhupada all the time as a Sanskrit editor. But right away I appreciated Shyamasundar. He was just an amazing person, and in my opinion, he was the best secretary Prabhupada ever had. He was just the secretary's secretary. He was wonderful as Srila Prabhupada's secretary because he was so attentive and he was so enthusiastic. And he was so good at being secretary. I never even knew how anything was going on. I was traveling around the world with Prabhupada and his entourage. I never saw a ticket. I don't even remember having a passport. It's all I remember was cooking and massaging and answering the bell. But Shyamasundar all these things were going on. He was getting all the visas for everyone, arranging the tickets to travel, of course answering the letters, typing the letters, arranging for everything to be done. And he was just incredibly efficient. And I liked him so much because when he first met me, he said to me, okay, he said, you're Prabhupada's servant. He said, so your job is to be next to him 24 hours a day. So I said, okay. I was very eager for it. And he said, when he rings the bell, you go in. He rings the bell, the servant goes in and you see what he wants. He said, when he's on the morning walk, you're next to him. He said, do you know how to use a recorder? Yeah. We're talking about like this big, like a VCR size. You can see in all the pictures. I realize that's why my back hurts now, was carrying this metal Uhr tape recorder for 2 years, on my shoulder. And he said, okay, he said, then you record Prabhupada's morning walks. So and he said, when we're on the plane, you sit next to Prabhupada. So I said, okay. So I liked Shyamasundar right from the start. I thought, I just get to be next to Prabhupada all the time, which it was a very scary idea, but it quickly became very wonderful. And and Prabhupada always sat at the window in the airplane, so I was always right next to him, next to him. And so then this one story with Shyamasundar, how amazing he was. This didn't happen here in London. This happened the other side, and actually happened right in Chalpati area, right at Sea View Park, where Prabhupada stayed at Mr. Kartikeya Mahadevi's house. And this was in December of '72. And one morning walk was funny with Shyamasundar. That was the other thing. Shyamasundar was, we were on the morning, and it was just 4 of us: Prabhupada, Shyamasundar, myself, and Pradyumna. There was no temple. Prabhupada was in Bombay arranging things with the Juhu land. And we're walking, and Shyamasundar, he looked into my eyes, and the sun is coming up, and he started laughing. He said, boy, he said, do you have jaundice? And I had jaundice. This was my first, this was like the 3rd initiation, after Brahmin. Then you go to India and you become really initiated in the understanding that you're not your body. First there's Brahmin initiation, then there's India initiation. And by the time you leave India, you really hope you're not your body. You just pray that this is all true. You just don't want to be your body. So that was my initiation. We're there for 1 month and bam, I have jaundice. So then we're leaving. We walked along the sea there, and Mr. Mahadev, he gave his car to use. This is 1972 in India. So in India they had 2 cars. There was Ambassador and the Fiat, little Fiats. So this was an Ambassador, and it came in a variety of colors, black and tan. And we had a black one, much nicer than the tan ones. And Shyamasundar would drive. He could do everything. He was the ideal secretary. So he drove, and Prabhupada and I are in the back seat. And we go to the place, and now it's time to leave. And with Prabhupada, everything, it's all timing with Prabhupada. Timing means you don't waste 1 second. Not 1 second. And I described putting on Prabhupada's shoes when he would go on a walk. Prabhupada didn't stop for you to put his shoes on. He would walk out the room, and I would have to catch his feet. And everyone, Everyone says, and it's true, Prabhupada never touched the ground, but believe me, when you wanted to put his shoes on, his feet were on the ground. And you had to get the shoe on his foot while he was moving, because he would walk into one and then take his next step and walk into the other. So being with Prabhupada, you had to really become attentive and very expert in whatever your area was. So Shyamasundar, he was the secretary, so we get back to the car. At that time there were 30 times less cars in Bombay than there are now. And it was always a traffic jam then. And we get into the car, and Prabhupada and I get into the back, and Shyamasundar gets into the front, puts the key in, and the car won't start. And he's trying, and it just won't start. So now he's thinking really fast. He's got to do. And he said, Prabhupada, I'll be right back. I'll get us a taxi. There's something wrong with the car. So he leaves, and Prabhupada and I are sitting in the back. And Prabhupada's very peaceful. I heard someone use that word, you know. It's what I like so much about Prabhupada. He was very peaceful. And you would really see that when everyone else left the room, when he was finished dealing with everyone. He'd just be peaceful. And I just liked that so much. I needed that so much, peace. And Prabhupada was always very peaceful, to stay on track. He's sitting to my right. He just has his hand on his cane in the back seat. And we're sitting waiting for Shyamasundar to come back. And all of a sudden, two men come to the car, and they open up the front doors. And they go in and they sit down. And we're sitting in the back. And now this conversation starts, and it's a little animated with Prabhupada, and he's speaking to him in Hindi, of course, and I don't understand anything. But the guy gets in, he sits down, he puts the key in, and he turns, and the car starts. It was like magic. And Prabhupada looks at me and he starts laughing. He says, we're in their car. So we had been in the wrong car. It was just exactly like every other car we had ever seen. And then he looks and I'm just like, I was just getting new to India, new to everything. And I'm just sitting, and Prabhupada says, don't worry, he said, they're going to take us home. So they're talking a little bit, and then Prabhupada, he said, just see. He said, this is the difference, he said, between India and your country, my country. He said, your country. He said, if we did this in America, he said they would take you out of the car and beat you to death, he said, if you sat in their car. He said, but here, he said, still there's some culture, he said, in India. He said, and these men, they come and they see a sadhu, and they say, where are you going? We'll take you there. He said, but not your country. So then, it was just a 10-minute drive, and we get home. And Prabhupada says, come up for prasadam. And of course, he says, no, we have to go to the office, and we have to go to work. Now, of course, this wasn't Prabhupada's residence. We're staying at Mr. Kartikeya, Mr. Mahadev's place. We took over. Prabhupada took their whole flat from them. They stayed in one little room, the whole family. We had 4 rooms for a month. And now Prabhupada's saying, come up for prasadam. So he's inviting him up, knowing they'll happily cook. Mrs. Mahadev would happily cook for everyone. And they said, no, we can't. Shyamasundar, next time I saw him was yesterday. I saw him at the manor. It was the first time. Now he came back to Mahadev's in about an hour or so. After he figured out. I never asked him what he thought when he went there and the car was gone. But this is what it was like being with Srila Prabhupada. So, I'll tell one story that happened at Bury Place. I did. Well, has anyone mentioned that what Prabhupada said about Sri Radha Londonishvaras? When he was there at Bury Place and he was arriving, to the plane greeting the deities, and he looked and he turned and he said, "They're the most beautiful." And then he offered his Dhammapada. And they were the most, and are the most beautiful. So. And we were talking, of course, that was Shamasundar, and there's Malati. And Malati will talk through her daughter. We've heard, yes?
What occasion was it that Prabhupada came and he said this about that?
I couldn't give you the date. There was 3-4 times I was there, but he did say it. It was at the earliest 73, the beginning of 73, not when it came to Manor, early in 1973.
Before Shri Radha Gopala.
Yeah. Your point? Transcendental competition. So Berry Place was very, very tiny, very beautiful, very wonderful. Prabhupada's rooms, always transcendental. Whenever you walked into Prabhupada's room, it was definitely, you're already in Vaikuntha, but there was like another level. You walk into the temple, but when you would go into Prabhupada's room, there was another experience, wonderful experience. So this Saraswati, by now, she was 3.5 years old or so, almost approaching 4 years old. And as you know from all these stories, Malati is very, as she is now, she's 24 hours, she's just doing devotional service. So somehow or other, Saraswati was taken care of at the same time by her extended family as well. And part of that extended family was Srila Prabhupada. And she pretty much could do anything she wanted. You heard about Janaki, a special relationship Prabhupada had with Janaki. Well, Saraswati, that was another one. Had a very special relationship with Prabhupada, and she could go in and out of his room and did whenever she wanted. There was no knocking, no. She could reach the doorknob, she'd find her way through there because it was an interesting place. Prabhupada was fun. So the one day I'm massaging Prabhupada, and massaging Prabhupada means Prabhupada sitting on a straw mat on the floor and wearing a gamcha, and I'm also wearing a gamcha, and there's a bottle of sandalwood oil and mustard oil. Sandalwood for the head, keep cool, Prabhupada said keep a cool head, and mustard oil for the body. So I'm busily massaging Prabhupada, and Saraswati comes in. Now, she had these things. In the States, we would call them animal crackers. Just little, what do you call them here? Biscuits, biscuits in the shape of all different animals. You get them little, like a circus box. So they're all different biscuits, but in the shape of animals, And Saraswati had this a little box of biscuits. And she comes in, and she's just like doing her own thing. And Prabhupada, he would just watch and he's looking. Now she comes up to Prabhupada because he's sitting there and, so it's kind of fun looking, I'm sure, for her. She was finding it amusing, and she's looking, and she's always had a cookie in her mouth, that was like, and then the next one, and so she's just there holding the cookie like this in her mouth. And Prabhupada's just looking at her, and she's just, like a normal child. And Prabhupada's laughing. And he said, Saraswati, he says, do you know what you remind me of? And she's like, you won't let go of it. He's there. You remind me of the garbage trucks in New York City. And I'm laughing now, and Saraswati has no idea. She's just, Prabhupada's talking to her, And he's there, yes. He said, in New York City they have these big garbage trucks. Hey, remember, Prabhupada lived there, huh? In the part of the city where every morning, they'd start 4 o'clock in the morning is when they would start collecting these massive trucks, noisy, smelly. And so he says, you remind me of these garbage trucks. He said, in New York, he said, every morning, he said, the trucks that go down the street. And when Prabhupada tells a story, he's very animated. And if he uses voices, if he's speaking as one person, he uses different voices. He does the whole, he does one transcendental person play. So he said they have these big trucks and they go down the street, he said, and they're very loud, and Saraswati's listening now. And he says, then they stop. He said, and in the back, he said, there's men. He said, and they go over and they get these big cans filled, he said, with garbage. He said, and they go to the truck, and the one man, there's a lever, he said, on the truck. So he's doing all these things that I'm doing. And he said, the man pushes the lever up. He said, and the truck goes, and it opens up the container. He said, then they throw the garbage in. He said, then it goes down, and it goes, He said, well, you're just like that garbage truck. Because she was throwing all this stuff in her mouth. Because obviously he was just amusing her, amusing me. It was what I liked so much. One thing God Brother Hari was speaking about the other night, and he said how Prabhupada was so funny. And out of everything, so many wonderful qualities. The quality I liked most of Srila Prabhupada was the loyalty that Prabhupada has for each and every one of us. Never would Prabhupada abandon the disciple. You can abandon him, and he would let you. But Prabhupada was so loyal to all of his disciples. And he would never let anyone say an unkind word about someone else, another disciple. He could say things like in India, he would praise his disciples. He'd say how they were professors and college professors, and they're doing this and giving up, and parents with millions of dollars, and they've given up everything to serve Krishna. But then when we were sometimes in his room, he'd say, you're such a fool and a rascal and a malechia. So he could instruct us and train us, make us strong. But to anyone, Prabhupada would defend each and every one of us. It was such a wonderful thing. And his most wonderful quality is that loyalty that Prabhupada had, eternal. But after that was Prabhupada's sense of humor. And as he said, and seeing Prabhupada laugh. Just like when he told him, when Prabhupada was done, he was laughing. He made himself laughing. And Prabhupada had what we call a knee slapper, you know. Prabhupada, he would, when Prabhupada was really laughing to tears, he would just slap his hand. But he just would exhibit so much all the time. So Saraswati had a very sweet relationship. Like I said, he didn't yell at the ladies and the children. Oh, Prabhupada he was like the best, grandfather. The children was always so sweet and always played with them, which included teasing. And you see that one video with the manner where he's grabbing the finger of Shiva Dvara. He's grabbing his finger and he's trying to get back to his mother. But then as soon as he breaks away, he goes back to Prabhupada to grab his finger. So he knew he was safe. So Prabhupada would tease them. At Dallas, he played leapfrog with the Gurukula children. Does everyone know what leapfrog is? Simple. And Prabhupada became the frog. And he had the little boy jump over him. And Prabhupada jumped over the boy, a young Gurukula boy, 5-year-old boy. Okay. Jamuna. I have to talk one story about Jamuna. All of them, again, are so wonderful. Jamuna, this story will tell it all, I think. We arrived Prabhupada arrived in Vrindavan on October 15th, 1972. It was the first day of Kartik in Vrindavan for that year, 1972. And he's going to his quarters, his 2 rooms at Radha Damodar Temple. And there taking care of Prabhupada's rooms were Guru Das and Jamuna. So I didn't know anything. You know, it was my first time outside of America, and now all of a sudden I'm in India, I'm with Prabhupada, I'm in Vrindavan for the first day of Kartik at Radha Damodar Temple. Just like that, everything just transformed. Now I had been with Prabhupada 1 month, and as I said, one of my main engagements was cooking, which was, I cooked all right. Prabhupada accepted it every day. And when I got to India, I had no idea, because you didn't get told things in ISKCON. You just found out things, you know. So we're there, and I mean, I didn't know anything, but you know, I'm staying here. This is where you're going to bathe, and I said, well, about cooking. Oh, you don't cook. Jamuna's here. I didn't know Jamuna. Jamuna was cooking, obviously, and she's at Radha Damodar Temple. So it was a most wonderful place, Radha Damodar Temple. Prabhupada said his rooms, and if you ever go, everyone has to see Prabhupada's rooms at Radha Damodar Temple, if you haven't already. Prabhupada said that those rooms are the very center of the spiritual world. He said the center. He said they were the hub of the wheel of the spiritual world. His 2 rooms at Radha Damodar Temple. So that's Radha Damodar Temple. That's Prabhupada's rooms at Radha Damodar Temple. And he said because this Krishna consciousness movement began here, he said by the blessings of Srila Rupa Goswami. Srila Rupa Goswami, but Srila Prabhupada there is where he did his writing, it's where he conceived going to America, everything. He said it began right there. So that's how special this place is. So now it's my first day there, and it was just very different. Chanting rounds, so many rounds, and I didn't have to cook. So as I said, my busiest time of the day was right when the massage ended. I would go into this like hyper speed, because when Prabhupada was bathing, drying, dressing, putting on tilak and chanting Gayatri, I had that much time to prepare his lunch. Take everything out of the cooker, chaunts, the sabjis, the dal, the rice, and roll out chapatis, which the dough is there, and set the plate up and bring it in. And again, it wasn't, you know, it was like, to me, it was an unwritten law. Prabhupada never said, you better have that lunch here by the time I'm finished Gayatri, or else. But I felt that way every day. I had to have it there by the time he finished Gayatri, or else. And I did. It was magic. It was Krishna's mercy, and it magically happened. It was probably maybe 12 minutes. You know, about 12 minutes a time you had to do all of that. And it happened. And you would just bring 1 chapati, because then you would go back and make another chapati. Just go back and forth. But now I'm in Vrindavan, and I'm told I don't have to cook. So Prabhupada finished massage, and it went from being the most hectic, anxiety-filled time for me to I had nothing to do. That was it. I was finished for the day, other than the bell ring. So I bathed, I dressed, I sat down on the veranda between the 2 rooms. There was an open veranda, and I chanted. So I'm watching Prabhupada in his room, Radha Damodar, chants Gayatri, and then he gets up, and he walks past me, and I offer obeisances. And he goes into the other room, which was the kitchen, and also where he did his translating work, and where you could see from that, where he sat, you could see Srila Rupa Goswami's samadhi. So Prabhupada opened the screen. There was a black screen door, and you know, screens kind of black, dark and everything. So he opened the door and he went in. Before he came out of his room, I saw Jamuna in there, and she was on the floor, for me, which was cooking on the floor was something I'd never experienced until that first day. She was on the floor, and there was a bucket with coal, and then cow dung, and she was rolling chapatis just on a little round marble thing right on the floor. And I could just see her in there. And Prabhupada was chanting Gayatri. And that was my first vision, and it's what I always remember about Jamuna, was her rolling these chapatis, and her whole body was just shaking in love for Prabhupada as she was doing it. And I'm there at Radha Damodar, and all I could think of was Mother Yasoda. Like, there's Mother Yasoda, she's just cooking, for Krishna. And she was doing, and so then Prabhupada went in, and I just didn't know what to do. And I'm just sitting there chanting, and like, this is my busy time. And I'm still just buzzing at this unfinished massage. And I'm sitting there, and for some reason I got up, and I walked over to the door, that screen door, and I opened it up to look inside and just see Prabhupada, what was going on. I didn't know how big the room, I didn't know anything. It was a very small room. And I opened it up and looked inside. And when I looked over, it was Prabhupada sitting down, on a little straw mat and a little table in front of him, and he's taking prasadam. So I became embarrassed, and I went to shut, and Prabhupada said, "Have you eaten?" And I said, "No, Prabhupada." I said, I'll eat with my godbrothers. I said, when you're finished. And he said, no. He said, "Come sit down, take prasadam." And again, I said, "No, Prabhupada." I said, I'll eat with the others. I said, after you're finished. I said, that's not, he said, "I can't do that, Prabhupada." And he said, "Come, sit down, take prasadam." And that was the last time Prabhupada had to tell me to do something 3 times. And it was the most wonderful thing, was Prabhupada inviting you to do anything, or offering you anything. I always accepted it with complete happiness and joy, without any, because I knew Prabhupada wanted to do it. It was what he wanted to do. So I went and I sat down right next to Prabhupada, right there at Radha Damodar Temple in Prabhupada's rooms. I sat down, and within a minute, Yamuna, she's already, while the discussion was going on, she's already preparing my plate. She's very expert, So everything done, I'm sitting, and all of a sudden I'm next to Prabhupada, and I have a thali in front of me with chapatis, rice, dal, sabjis I had never seen before. And Prabhupada now didn't say another word, and Prabhupada didn't speak when he took prasadam. He was just taking prasadam, and I started eating. So, of course, first I grabbed the chapati and broke off some and put it around some sabji, and I put it in my mouth. And I thought, wow, I had never tasted anything so good. And I thought, I'm cooking for Prabhupada, and this is what, like, Jamuna was making this wonderful. It was just, and I just started eating. And she's bringing, chapatis one at a time to Prabhupada, and now she's bringing one for Prabhupada, one, and me one, and Prabhupada. And I'm just completely immersed in ecstasy, eating this Mahaprasadam here. And that went on for about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then finally we were done, and the moment was over. And then Prabhupada looked at me, he had a big smile, and he said, "Did you like?" And I said, without any exaggeration, "Yes, Prabhupada, very much." And he said, "Good." He said, "Now tomorrow you cook for Jamuna Prabhu." I've never cooked for Jamuna. That would be such a wrong thing to do. But it was so nice, and it was so instructive of Prabhupada's mood as well. How I was very happily accepting service and enjoying prasadam and everything. He said, "But now tomorrow you do it," he said, for her. So that was my very first experience with Jamuna, from that day, we formed a bond, and I saw her off and on right up until the 70s there. And this is the first time I've probably seen her in 20 years or so. But the affection only has grown stronger for all of us, seeing all of them. Shama Sundar, it's such a joy to see. So that was Jamuna. What else did I have? Covered Malati's daughter. And yeah, there was one other Prashadam story I was requested to tell, so I'll tell that. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. This did happen here, and this was something for us. Once we left America, it was an experience that the devotees we would enjoy. It was going to life members' houses. It was going into the Indian community, and they would prepare feasts, because we always liked to feast, the devotees. So one was arranged, and we all went. It was everyone at the manor at the time. It was about 20, 25 devotees. And Prabhupada was there, so taking prasadam with all the devotees. And we were all in one room. It was maybe half this size. And before we went, there's a rumor had gone around in ISKCON. It's a rare thing, rumors. That these people cooked in oil. These Indians that were cooking in oil. Now this was completely, there was no temple in ISKCON that had oil in the kitchen, except maybe to grease a machine or something, you know, but there were no oil. Ghee, we always made ghee. From the very beginning, Prabhupada introduced ghee, and it was in every center. We would, you know, getting vegetables was difficult, but somehow we had enough money to make ghee everywhere. You know, we couldn't even afford to buy cauliflower, but we had ghee to fry it. So we were told they're cooked in oil, which meant that's not a good thing. But we all went and kind of forgot about all that as soon as we're sitting down, and Prabhupada was at the head of the room, in the center, in a chair, and had a table in front of him, and they brought, it was a very typical ISKCON feast at that time. There were puris, and sabjis, and sweet rice, and samosa, and sweets, and halava. So, we're all taking prasadam joyfully, you know, with Prabhupada in our presence. And when we finished, we all went back. So now, Prabhupada goes into his room, and about 10 minutes later, the bell rings. So I run into Prabhupada's room, offer obeisances. And Prabhupada said, so did everyone like, he said, the prasadam? Which was an unusual question. He asked me things. And I said, yes, Prabhupada. I said everything. He said, everyone liked? And then, of course, like, then my mind started, I'm thinking, what's going on, you know? And I said, well, Prabhupada, I said, we had heard that they had cooked in oil. And I said, in fact, I said, Pradyumna, I said, his stomach, he said, he's feeling nauseated, he feels sick, he said, and he thinks it's probably because they did cook in oil. And Prabhupada looked, he said, Pradyumna ate 10 puris. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I thought, you know, and I was very careful because I heard they had cooked in oil. And I said, and I knew I didn't eat a lot. I could do that sometimes, on occasion. And so I looked at Prabhupada and I said, yes, Prabhupada. I said, but now I wasn't feeling good all of a sudden, you know. And I said, I don't feel so good either. I said, but I hardly ate anything. And Prabhupada looked, he said, yes. He said, but you did have 4 puris. And I thought, and I was thinking, how did Prabhupada know what we're all doing? We're just eating, you know, we're just taking prasad. But Prabhupada is conscious of everything, all of the time. at will. He would know, and he knew me so well. As I'm still so foolish, sometimes I would think I would do things or not do things, and Prabhupada didn't know or something, you know. Prabhupada knew, he knew everyone. Imagine a person who was with him all of the time, how well he knew me. But still, I never, when I went in the room, I never thought Prabhupada's looking at this. Not that it wasn't dark, it was very dark, but that's not what Prabhupada saw. Somewhere in there he saw some spark, and he would always encourage everyone in devotional service. It would be amazing, Prabhupada, you'd go in his room like Shama Sundar would always, you never know what he would do, what was going to happen next, what he would say. You know, it could be anything. Rang the bell. It's 11:30 in the morning. It means it's time for massage. But he rang the bell, so I went in, offered obeisances, and he looked at me, so serious, and said, "Can you give me massage now?" And you would be totally like caught off guard because, and I said, "Prabhupada, I'm sitting in this room all day just waiting to serve you." But he made it sound like I had an option. Huh? If I didn't, I could have said, "No, I'm not doing." But it was just that humility that Prabhupada had. He didn't say, "All right, I'm ready. You know, bring in the oil, let's go. What's taking you so long?" It was never so cultured, so much humility. As I said, the same, he was royal, complete royalty. When you would see him walk, he would walk up to the deities and he looked like a king. And then at the same moment, you would just see nothing but humility. How someone could look both roles at the same time. He would look like a king, completely humble. But he did it, and it was all there, and it was all true. And it was every day, every moment of our lives. And all these festivals, you can see it always goes back. It's all we can do is glorify Prabhupada. Because it's all any of us are made of, is Prabhupada's mercy. That's the real understanding. Everything. And that applies to everyone here. Not just first generation, next generation. You're all nothing but the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. And the more you remember it, the better off you'll be. The more you can advance in Krishna consciousness. But for the mercy, it's like Christian, but for the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, there go I. That's a real mantra. Prabhupada in New Dwarka once, I went into the room and he was sitting in his bedroom. And he looked at me and he said, "If it weren't for the chanting of Hare Krishna," he said, "you couldn't do anything." He said, "You Westerners," he said, "you're so contaminated by illicit sex and intoxication." He said, "But if not for the chanting of Hare Krishna, you couldn't accomplish anything." But again, that goes beyond that. If it wasn't for the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, he accepted service in so many situations, from so many of us, and still does. He was very kind. But on his disappearance, of course, it becomes emphatic to follow those instructions. And that's why it's so important. When the spiritual master leaves, one has to cling to his instructions and to his service, and then you're protected. He said, if you just chant, he told me, he said, if you just chant your rounds, follow the regulative principles, and chant 60 minutes, at the end of this life, without a doubt, you go back home, back to Godhead. So imagine such a wonderful person. Is there anyone else here to speak at this time? I'll go on as they look.
May I ask you a question?
Yes, you may.
Actually, a couple of questions. One, first I'd like to clarify, I wasn't presenting any competition. I just wanted to try to establish the chronology of when it actually happened. But the first question is really, you mentioned that Prabhupada, thank you. You mentioned that Prabhupada referred to Jamuna as Jamuna Prabhu. I wanted to ask you about that, because in those days, if I'm not mistaken, Prabhupada referred to all the devotees, both male and female, and we all referred to each other as Prabhu. Is this correct?
Absolutely, yeah. Yes. Yeah, he did, and Prabhupada wouldn't always say Prabhu either. I mean, like, you know, like me, I mean, he called, I don't know what he called me. He called me Sruti Kirti. He would say, get Sruti Kirti. Or he may say get Sruti Kirti Prabhu. You know, like with me, he would say, like with Paramahamsa, go get Shama Sundar. Of course, he would say, go get Guru Das. Sometimes he might say a Prabhu in there as well. One thing is for sure, Prabhupada never called any of his females Mataji. And that I know. And I just listened to a lecture on the way over, and Prabhupada was talking, I was thinking of his temple room, and Prabhupada was talking about how we have to give up sex life. He said, otherwise you can get no determination, right, in your Krishna consciousness. If you're engaged in sex life, then the determination will never develop. And if you can't give it up completely, then of course we regulate it. And he said, and by chanting we can be protected. He said, just like in the temple room. He says, we have men and women. He said, boys and girls, they're side by side. He said, but they're chanting. He says that they're brothers and sisters. And I thought it was such an interesting thing that he said, that called them brothers and sisters. He said, chanting together. He said, and there's no difficulty because of that. And Prabhupada, of course, was in his 70s. And we were literally like grandchildren, you know, what to speak. So he would call people affectionately, but yeah, he did use that term, as we all did. And he would say that. You know, I mean, there's the ongoing discussions all the time about, and you know, but both of the words have been, I've heard them used over the years in a negative sense when we call someone Mataji, almost like we would say like a four-letter word, you know. When we say Prabhu, you know, Prabhu, you didn't do this, or Prabhu, you didn't do that. So we've just misused the words completely. If you want to argue about what, you know, we should think of what we're saying when we even use the word. Someone brought up now, there's some temples you can go to, and on the bathroom doors it says Prabhus and Matajis. So anyone can walk in off the street and you immediately become either a Prabhu or a Mataji, you know, if you can understand, walk into the right one. You know. But I have no difficulty using either. I certainly, Vishaka, I see here, many times in the last few days, she's Vishaka Prabhu, there's no question about it. I wouldn't think of calling her anything else. And that she likes that, and I call others Mataji, whatever anyone's comfortable with. The whole idea is, as Vaishnavas, we don't want to create and cause anxiety for anyone, and we don't want to offend anyone. Vaishnavas, you know, we can go declare war on everyone outside and bring them to Krishna consciousness. But amongst our fellow Vaishnavas, we have to exercise, you know, intelligence. Prabhupada said, use your common sense. Does that answer? Understand it? I never, was that my understanding with Prabhupada? My understanding when Prabhupada established these places in Mayapur and Vrindavan was he wanted his disciples to go to these places to recharge spiritually, to chant and hear. Not only wasn't he interested in this, he was against us even going outside of the temple compound. So I don't know where you would learn anything, and the temples had nothing but Westerners in it at the time. So we weren't going to learn Vedic culture except from Srila Prabhupada. We wanted to learn his culture, Vaishnava culture. That's our interest, was Vaishnava culture. But he didn't have us going to India to go around India and see what all the culture was about. He had us going to his temples, to go to see the deities, to hear classes, to become enthused, to chant rounds, more rounds, better rounds. That's my understanding.
Thank you very much.
Standing by it. Yes. Karuna Daksai Prabhu.
Prabhuji, I was interested in knowing what Srila Prabhupada said about instructing the temple for Shri Radha Londonishvaras in Regent's Park to Mukunda Maharaj and a lot of other devotees. Because that's something I'd like to do if I can.
So what was your question again? Because I don't think I know the answer to it.
Just some guidance on how to go about constructing the temple for Shri Radha Londonishvaras.
Oh, can you? Don't know. You have to chant a lot. Without that, nothing will happen. Yeah. We're still waiting in Hawaii, Prabhupada, at the temple there. He stood in his sun deck and he said, I see a temple there. It was on one spot on the lawn. He said, I see a nice open Vedic temple there. And that was in 1975. So they haven't broke ground for that temple either. But they think, you know, you always think. Yamuna told me a wonderful story about how she got an instruction from Prabhupada, and looking at the letter 20 years later, she was able to implement that. You know, so instructions from the spiritual master, they can manifest immediately, the response to them, and years later, all along, you just always have to strive to follow them, especially if we were that fortunate to get a personal instruction from Prabhupada to do something. Yeah, you direct. You pick one.
What was your best moment with Prabhupada?
All of them. You know, I have a lot of favorite stories. One thing too, I have to say this, and Prabhupada would say most didn't mean necessarily that anything else was lesser. Most was an emphasis on just how much something was. So with Prabhupada, he could go to every temple and say, he is most beautiful, Krishna. And go to the next temple and say, because he is most beautiful, meant extremely more beautiful than you can imagine. But maybe he didn't. I could never venture to say, Prabhupada say something to speculate what he was thinking. So. But I do know he said that about most. He said it doesn't mean that something else is less. It's just to show emphasis, the importance, how important. This is most important. Like he would say chanting 16 rounds is most important. You know, say getting up for Mangalartik is most important. Well, then does that mean something else has to go? See, that's how we think, you know, that immediately we want to put everything in a line. All right, what's first, what's second, what's third? It's all up at the top. That's how everything. There's no, you know, no lessers in Krishna consciousness. All just vital, all important. But I'll tell you the story that I usually tell. The best moment. And that also happened here, so we'll tell it. It happened at Bhaktivedanta Manor, which I'm sure everyone here has been to Bhaktivedanta Manor and seen Prabhupada's rooms. Well, when Prabhupada was there was just a wooden floor. Okay, and they would put down the sheets when guests would come. But it was just a full-length plank wood or whatever it was, beautiful wood floor. And now this was in August of '73, so now I was Prabhupada's servant for a year. So I very experienced, knew what I was doing. And I was massaging Prabhupada. Now Prabhupada would sit by the windows because the sun would come in. And you can see there's photos how Prabhupada's sitting. There's photos in the Prabhupada book of me massaging him, and that's the picture, just like that. So this particular day, when I finished his back and I went to the side, Guru Das mentioned it, I knocked the mustard oil over. And Prabhupada always said, put the cap on the mustard oil. Everything, you can't be too careful. So I didn't, and of course, I hit the bottle, and it's like a, half a liter bottle, plump, and mustard oil spilling all over the floor. So Prabhupada turned it up. And before I could do anything, before I could move, Prabhupada just screamed. Prabhupada could yell. I mean, he could yell loud. And he just screamed at me. And he said, "You fool, you'll be intelligent when you're 80. And I mean, before he said anything, I was already crushed knowing that I had done a really bad thing. So before I could do anything, he said, "Go get a katuri." He said, "Come back." So I ran out of the room, right in the closet around the right. That was my kitchen at the manor, where I cooked for Prabhupada. So I went in there, I grabbed a metal katuri, metal cup. And I ran back in, and Prabhupada just sitting there. And then he said, I offered a basin, and he said, "Just follow me." And he stuck his hand right in this puddle of oil, and he starts scraping it into the katuri. So we're both putting our palms in the oil and scraping it. And now he doesn't say a word. That cloud was there, and Prabhupada was just, my perception was he's really mad. He was really angry. And we're scraping it in. And we got all the oil. It was just a shiny spot on the floor. But all the oil's now in the cup. And he looked at me and he said, "Use that oil for the massage." So it was like, that was like almost like a punishment. Although he was not wasting anything. But now this oil was not exactly, perfect condition. When you're rubbing someone's body and the oil's got little whatever in it, fuzzy things. And so, but he made me use that oil to massage him. And then I continued to massage, and I'm beside him. Now again, he just went quiet. Like the whole room, it was like we were in a vacuum. It was just quiet. And my heart's like just beating. And he's just, Prabhupada could sit, and you didn't know. You couldn't know Prabhupada was moods. But what I knew was he's really mad. And for some reason, I had a very strange mind. And I never said to Prabhupada, I never said the words like, "I'm sorry. Okay, we'll never do that again." And I never thought at that time, although I knew he's mad and angry with me, I couldn't say, "I'm very sorry, Prabhupada, that I did that, and it won't happen again, and I'll follow your instructions." That was like, I don't know if it was too easy, or it's just not how I thought. And as I said, what I liked most about Prabhupada was his sense of humor. So what I liked least was when he was angry with me. So I had to get it from being the worst possible thing. I didn't want to just make an apology. I wanted Prabhupada to laugh. So while I'm massaging him, and he's filled with anger, Londonishvaras. So now I'm going over in my mind for over a half an hour my exact words that I'm going to say to him. And finally I'm in front of him, and I'm massaging his feet. That was the last thing, massage Prabhupada's lotus feet. And I have his feet in my hands, and I'm rubbing the oil and squeezing pulling his toes. And I'm thinking, I have to do it. Prabhupada, you haven't even looked at me. That's how I feel. He hasn't looked at me, he won't say anything, he's just waiting. So I said, "Prabhupada," and he just like, I said, "Thank you, Prabhupada." I said, "I thought it would take a lot longer for me to become intelligent." And Prabhupada started slapping his knee and laughing, and these tears coming out, and he just kept laughing and laughing. Because he said I'd be intelligent when I was 80. So I thanked him. So he's laughing, and he says, "Yes." He said, "Very good." He said, "When we were boys," he said, "when we were children, and one of the boys would do something foolish, we would say that. You'll be intelligent when you're 80. He said, so I've used it on you. He never said, it's the only time you'll never see it anywhere, Prabhupada said, but he used it on me. So, I just turned 58. So I still have 22 more years to go, but already 38 years have passed. So and Mekla, she has to cook very healthy for me so I can live to be 80. Because I figure real intelligence, somehow Prabhupada has to bless me with Krishna consciousness. That's my hope and prayer, and that's my favorite moment, because Prabhupada said I would be intelligent when I was 80. So Krishna has to fulfill that statement by Prabhupada. But I just have to stay out of traffic. So we should stop here. It's late. Everyone's been sitting for many hours. Thank you. I'm sorry for keeping you so long. I want to thank everyone.